Ingeborg Bachmann, Journey into the Desert. For those of you not familiar with the work of Margarethe von Trotta, she was a significant figure in the new German cinema of the 1970s. She collaborated with Volker Schlorndorff on The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum. And also she wrote, this was about sort of a film about a fugitive left-wing terrorist. She also did a film about two sisters, one of whom has flirtings with left-wing terrorism. This was the Red Army faction. So this is the time when the left were not unafraid to commit acts of violence. And
the new German cinema is obsessed with the RAF.
Yeah, I mean, Germany in Autumn is a great reference point, and
also Christian Petzold as well.
Of course, yeah. Who we'll talk about later in the week. So von Trotta, and she has drifted in the last few decades into, I guess, prestige biopics of important cultural and political figures. Hannah Arendt. Is that the only one? Maybe I think she's done another one, but I'll just double check.
It's so interesting. I wasn't aware she'd made a Hannah Arendt film. I think I knew it had been made, but I hadn't connected von Trotta with this, and that makes so much interesting sense because Ingeborg Bachmann is, as a kind of literary and public intellectual, shares so many overlaps with Hannah Arendt as a figure, I suppose. And I mean, obviously, for those who aren't aware, Ingeborg Bachmann was a poet, also a novelist. I think we covered one of her adaptations, Malina, by Schroeter, Werner Schroeter, some years ago, maybe, or months or years ago, on this podcast. This film takes us to a particular juncture in Ingeborg Bachmann's life. So we don't look at her early relationship with Paul Celan. We see her marriage or relationship and the dissolution of the relationship with Max Frisch, so Swiss playwright Swiss playwright Max Frisch. And it's told in this tessellating, refracting series of deeply irritating flashbacks and flash forwards through these various through her kind of falling in love with Max Frisch, the disintegration of that relationship, and her other affairs of the heart and the body that kind of happen around that, and then this kind of return to this really evacuated chamois oriental rug of a section that's supposed to be in Egypt, I think, which is supposed to be a place of liberation or something. But the film itself, I found it's pure butter would melt in its mouth, prestige, middle of the road, bucking, bourgeois, middle brow kind of European art house. So everything is so exhaustingly beautifully composed. The costumes and the dresses are always exactingly correct. It is designed and shot within an inch of its life. So it wrings all the blood out of itself. It's such a. It is immediately. I mean, I said to you after the film, I was like, the problem with it is that in every scene, you immediately know how that scene wants you to feel, which is a closedness. It doesn't open itself out at all. And I think for me, Ingeborg, there's a tension that's not explored in Bachmann's life and writing, in that she was there was a distrust of language in her work. Yeah. So there's a kind of Wittgensteinian excavation of language to get to its kind of essence or truthiness. She was a perfectionist, would labour and work over her words and her language. She wasn't careless about it. So there is a precision, but there's also a chaos involved in that, an unleashing, and there was also a great chaos in her own life. And the film could really have articulated those tensions, but it's just so placid. It's just so nice, and it just rolls off the eye in the worst way possible. I don't know if I think we both share a distaste of this film.
Well, this screening was very memorable because we were stuck, really trapped between a lot of people in a very tight row. Again, not to invoke one's viewing experience too heavily. We are, of course, objective, but we wanted to leave and we couldn't. It was sort of unbearably perfect in a way. Yeah. And if I met if I were to have the fortune to meet, say, the art director on it, or even the cinematographer, maybe I would congratulate them on a job well done. However, it is this film,
kind of
even the
comment.
composer, the music. The music is actually it's deployed horrendously, but it is quite sort of beautiful, melodramatic, Glassian kind of.
These little
vistas,
swells of
strings,
strings, vibrato and tremolo to know that there's a kind of a tension, or it's very programmatic use.
It is. This film is
music.
obscenely less than the sum of its parts, and because it doesn't have anything to say, and it has focused. It has completely against its own interest, focused on the aspect of a writer's life that is least interesting. These kind of like bitter, whimsical, dalliances or desires, or squabbling over how much noise someone's typewriter makes. A kind of a bit of bickering about whether one's work is influenced by the life of one's partner. There's a scene where Max Frisch gets annoyed that she's burnt her diaries, which he was using to as inspiration, and she says, you shouldn't be inspired by my life, whatever.
Justifiably so.
But it's all just like, so I mean, it's not discourse in the sense of it being about BLM or something, but it is like, it functions in the same way as like so like
she's a girl boss, isn't
yeah,
she?
it functions exactly. It functions in the same way. A lot of the lines are kind of dogmatically deployed references to a kind of discourse of feminism, of what is a woman's place in the world, how can a woman writer survive. I'm sure these are not insignificant factors, but they must, in a work of art, be presented in such a way that the audience can make their own way around what is actually true.
And this isn't a work of art. This is a front. It's Foyle's front table books. Chosen by the staff. It's a very. I think there's so little of her own writing and her own process and her own methodology and her own poetics in this film. What it does show is it shows lots of her life as the public intellectual, giving readings, being given awards, speaking.
So it's a celeb biopic. It's like a film about Diana. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, you come away with no. If you were glancingly familiar with Ingmar Bachmann's work or not, it feels like they've created a film for those who. I don't understand why you'd want to go and see a film by a writer who you don't know who they are and haven't engaged with their work in any way, or their life in some sense. We're seeing it because we're at a film festival, and I don't know. I think there's a strangeness to that. You come away at the end of it not having any feeling for Bachmann's poetics or literary technique or anything like that. And I think it's just, for that reason, it's just such a shallow exercise and very self-congratulatory about this is an important film. This is a very important film. This is an important person. I
feel like I've walked in on the German, equivalent of the BBC, I suppose. Yeah. The sort of media establishment. I feel like I've walked in on the German media establishment, knocking out a quick one, and it's terribly embarrassing. And I just wish I'd shut the door sooner than I did. Because it's not for us to see, really. We are in Berlinale.
It's very embarrassing.
Trotta is an institution here, I'm sure, and I did.
And Bachmann is as well in Germany. Maybe,
and Bachmann, and but two rights don't make a right, and
except in Germany where lots of rights keep making rights.
And rights. But
I think that's like because there's a. I'm sorry to derail you. There's one thing I wanted to say now because I'm going to forget otherwise. And this is a sort of point that bears the relationship to Ingmar Bachmann. Also, to many other films I've seen at the moment, there is this toe-curling trend of a lot of films at the moment to begin with black leader and then to have some diegetic sound that we don't see an object yet. And
every film.
A phone ringing,
almost every film.
Drink being poured, some just kind of maybe some rhubarb. And then the black slowly might either fade or cut to a scene. In this film, it's the telephone, and it just seems to be... It's such a lazy device of.
Well, in this film, it's a terrible dream sequence.
Drawing you in,
A dream sequence which is terrible.
I forgot about that. It was a dream sequence. Yeah,
it's terrible in a way that's different from the rest of the film, which is also terrible. No, it was quite hard to figure out afterwards just why I detested it so much, because it was hard to take issue individually with,
because it was too
as
perfect.
I say, the various bits that were, but it was perfect in service of nothing. And therefore its perfectionism bristled. And I just felt like I was watching an extended perfume advert.
It felt like a fashion editorial,
with more sadness.
You know, because in a way, like it's obviously sipping from the cup of Phantom Thread, and where Phantom Thread is a period drama that really is very muscular and weird and unsettling. And I think this was trying to go for a similar kind of structure of feeling and ambience. But I think, you know, it's Paul Thomas Anderson's greatest film probably, and he has a great ability to evoke that weirdness in Phantom Thread. But this film had none of that, because the characters were very wooden. You know, they felt like you didn't feel like you were watching a fleshy live person. You felt like you were watching a mannequin of that famous person. You know, it's like
Absolutely.
This is Max Frisch, the character Max Frisch, the writer. This is so and so. This is so and so. Everyone was very instrumental, and I just didn't like it. You know, it was really weak.
Just a footnote: she also made I wasn't making up about the multiple biopics of important with German women. She also did Rosa Luxemburg.
She did Rosa.
But this was in the 80s.
Yeah, public.
But Barbara Sokoa played Rosa Luxemburg and Hannah Arendt.
That's interesting. It's cottage industry, this.
It is. She did start, I mean, in the New German Cinema era, and she's certainly not the only New German Cinema director to completely fall off after the 70s.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways these films owe more to their, you know, the editors and the cinematographers than they do the directors in some cases. But yeah, The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum and The Second Awakening of Christa Klagers.
It's such
very
a German.
They're very taut thrillers. They're very fun.
It's a very German thing to have a person's name in a film.
And then I think around Marianne and Julianne, which I've also seen, she sort of falls apart a bit because she's trying to solve a political quandary in her head. And the only people who's, you know, like Germany in Autumn, actually, which she wasn't involved with, weirdly. This was
a boys' club
portmanteau film, portmanteau film by the New German Cinema people about 1979,
but officiated over by Alexander Kluge.
Yeah, and with the involvement of Fassbinder scratching his balls, which I think is the only reasonable response to political violence and the struggle to liberate whilst using tools of violence.
So there's not really much more you can say about it. It's just very, very by the by. It was it's just toothless, I think, for me. And
one other thing I want to say, and you might have stuff to chime in on this. We're not saying, we sort of slightly are saying, you shouldn't do films about living people who made art, biopics of artists. There are exceptions, like Edvard Munch, which is a very innovative, like mock documentary, a very long form, innovative mock documentary, much like Peter Watkins' other work, which is British as well, using this patrician British voiceover to convey the life of an artist rather than giving them a voice.
Yeah,
this is an amazing achievement, I feel.
Peter Greenaway is also, if not
Greenaway,
he's interesting at least as a biopicker.
I made this realization that actually the British, it's one thing the British have a bit of a firm foot forward on, is biopics of artists. Ken Russell, Derek Jarman, and Peter Greenaway, as you say, and Peter Watkins, most notably, have managed to crack using a kind of a formal disruptions, destabilizing a kind of an authoritative voice.
You're right. Yeah,
they've managed to convey the lives of artists really well. The only other one I can think of is Andrei Rublev by Tarkovsky, which isn't really a film about the artist Andrei Rublev.
I think
it's about the time he lived.
The Georgians and Armenians have a taste for it as well. I think both Parajanov and Georgi Shangalaya both made biopics, as it were, of Pirosmani.
True.
Which are both in their own ways really excellent films. But
you
I think,
almost forget that they're about the artist. Is that what you're going to say? Sorry.
I think you forget, because what you're seeing is a work it's a response to the life and the work of that person, and like you said, it might disrupt or disfigure, and it meets greatness with its own attempt at greatness. I think, and says, okay, well, I think actually Greenaway's Eisenstein in Guadalajara, which is a later Greenaway, it's not perfect. It might not even be great or good, but it's certainly a really interesting engagement with, like, how do you make a film about Eisenstein in Mexico and his years in the desert, literally. And I think it meets it with this real kind of postmodern absurdity, which I think he also did, with the Rembrandt as well. And because it engages with the fact that it's not just an artist you're looking at, but the art they've made. And in this film, it's like Ingeborg Bachmann could just be some woman.
Exactly, and I think that anonymity, that lack of sort of footnoting, would be the way to go. And I think that leads us nicely. Well, because I was thinking also about because there was this Fassbinder biopic that obviously none of us saw, but
the Peter von
no,
Rebel with a Cause or whatever.
Yeah, that one, the one that was about his life, and it was just loads of people dressing up as the people in the films. Obviously bad. We didn't see it. We didn't need to see it to know it was bad. That
Enfant Terrible, I think it was called.
Enfant Terrible, that was it.
Yeah, got it.
And these films just exist to create some kind of discourse, and they exist so that people buy tickets thinking of the person the film was about.